have been shot by the Rwandan officials, have shot refugees in the street who are begging for food. Are you saying that Britain is happy sending people to a country like that?
Well, it's not just the British Parliament that was happy with that. The UNHCR did as well. The UNHCR themselves, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, sends refugees themselves from places like Libya to Rwanda.
Philp helped fill hotels. Now he's back, blaming Labour for the chaos. Watch him squirm when the receipts hit the fan.
£100 million. And I don't even know whether we got any of it back. I'm told Rwanda's refused to give any of that back. That's a ridiculous amount of money. Only 3 went to Rwanda, and they went voluntarily, and the High Court ruled it wasn't a safe country. Your plans didn't work. Let me put it to you now. If they're not in hotels, what would you do now?
Well, let's take each of your points in turn. So on Rwanda, firstly, the scheme never actually started. The first flight was due to take off at just about 3 or 4 weeks after the general election. There were court challenges, as you say, both in Strasbourg and in the Supreme Court, actually, here in the UK. And we had to pass a law through Parliament to basically deal with those legal challenges. That's why the start was delayed. But the scheme never actually started. In terms of the cost, because Labour then cancelled it just after the election. Now, I think it would have worked because a similar scheme worked in Australia, and I've already explained how if you're an illegal immigrant in France and you know if you cross the channel you're going to wind up in Rwanda, you're almost certainly not going to bother attempting the crossing. That's why it worked in Australia. Now, on the cost point, yes, it did cost several £100 million to get it set up and to then run it. But if you measure that against the money that Labour is now spending on the asylum system, on hotels and flats and goodness knows what else, that is costing several £billion per year. So while, yes, you're right, £700 million is a lot of money, if by spending that you stop the crossings and thereby save billions and billions of pounds a year, that is obviously worth doing. But
you forget that the High Courts and the Supreme Courts, they've said it was an unsafe country. Are we really going to say that we're going to actually say, well, asylum seekers who may well be, and a lot of them are genuine, we know, and we've got to start telling these facts, that 70 to 80% of them are genuine asylum seekers leaving war-torn countries. Are we seriously saying, as a country of Britain, our British values are that we would send them to a country that is unsafe, where we know they shot down refugees in the street in that country who were begging for food? So we would say, as Britain, we'll send you there?
Well, again, a few points to answer. So first of all, the people crossing by small boat obviously are not departing from a war zone. They're leaving France. Now, and they've very often travelled through not just France, but also... Please let me finish the point.
Because we don't have enough time. But you know they have every right to come here. They don't have to stop at the first country. We know that is not true. They have every right to here. We have a long history of refugees coming to this country. We would never have any coming here if we said stop at your first country. Everyone's got a neighbouring country. We would never have any refugees here.
These are mostly young men who could easily claim asylum in France. Of course, we have moral obligations.
They can speak English. Some of them work with our Afghanistan military, Mr. Philp.
Okay,
some of them work with Afghanistan, and they were left there. And we've seen now with the MI6 situation that their lives have been further exposed. Don't we have a duty to look after these people?
Yeah, we do, and we have brought over directly 25,000, I think, or even more than that, Afghans who worked with British forces. We have discharged that moral obligation. We've welcomed 200 and something thousand Ukrainians, a couple of 100,000 people from Hong Kong.
We put on a separate scheme for Ukrainians. I'm glad you mentioned the Ukrainians. We put on a specific system and scheme. They could go to the next country next to them, Poland, and get a visa and come here. We're not offering that the same to Afghanistan or Syria or Iraq or any of these countries.
Well, let me correct you. Actually, we did offer a scheme like that to people in Syria during the civil war.
It was nowhere near as big as 200,000, and we didn't ask the people of Britain to budge up and open up a spare room for them and pay them to do it, did we?
So where there are genuine crises, including Syria, you were wrong a minute ago to say we didn't welcome Syrians, including Syria, we set up bespoke routes. You've also got routes like refugee family reunion. We should be able, the British Parliament and the elected government should be able to decide who we would like to prioritise, and we chose to prioritise people involved in the Syrian civil war.
Can we go back to my question? Do you think it's OK to send them to an unsafe country where refugees have been shot by the Rwandan officials, have shot refugees in the street who are begging for food? Are you saying that Britain is happy sending people to a country like that?
Well, it's not just the British Parliament that was happy with that. The UNHCR did as well. The UNHCR themselves, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, sends refugees themselves from places like Libya to Rwanda. So if the UNHCR considers it safe and suitable, I think it's reasonable that we do as well. The court's concern, let me finish the point, the court's concern that you referred to was specifically about the risk that somebody would get sent from Rwanda to their country of origin, which might not be safe. That was the court's concern. And that's why the last government entered into a treaty, got binding commitments from the Rwandan government. They wouldn't do that. And we passed a bill through Parliament in order to overcome and deal with the concerns the court raised. But the point is Labour cancelled that scheme just days before it was due to start. And as a result, illegal immigration over the Channel from France, and France is a safe country, illegal immigration has surged to record ever levels under this Labour government. They've got a migration crisis, which is of their own creation, and that is why we then have these problems with hotels and everything else.
And back to the situation now with that hotel. You are saying that migrants shouldn't be housed in hotels, they shouldn't be housed in houses of multiple occupancy or houses that are needed for social housing. What is the solution then? Because we know with the barge, Bibi Stockholm, there were issues, there were health issues. We also know with things like the military bases, there have also been health issues, legal challenges over that. They end up costing more than hotels. So where do you propose that these migrants are rehoused to?
Yeah, well, I'll just point out firstly that the last government did reduce the number of hotels by 200 in the space of just 9 months. But unfortunately, under the Labour government, that trend has not continued. The real point is to stop the crossings in the first place, as I've described how you can do that by removing people who arrive here.
So where should these migrants go that are moved out of this hotel? Because potentially it's not just these ones at the Bell Hotel, is it? You were urging Conservative councils to then threaten legal action over more hotels. So we could see many, many more migrants needing to be rehoused at short notice. Where do you propose they go?
So the numbers coming out of the Epping Hotel look like it's about 150. There are some other options. I mean, there's the barge you've mentioned. So the barge was ordinarily used to accommodate, I think it was oil and gas workers. So it can equally be used to accommodate asylum seekers.
Closed down because of health issues, wasn't it?
Well, no, actually, there were some water supply issues at the beginning which got fixed. Labour then chose to shut the barge down about a year ago, which I think was a mistake.
It was seen as being inhumane, and some of the people on that boat suffered serious issues. Really, you know, I think, and it was a despicable scene.
I'm sorry, I don't accept your claim it was inhumane. I've already just explained.
It's not my claim. It's others that have referred to it as that.
OK, fine. Well, look, those barges are ordinarily used to accommodate like oil and gas workers and construction workers. Okay. So given that workers are accommodated there ordinarily, to then claim somehow it's inhumane to have illegal immigrants claiming asylum there, I think is frankly a ridiculous thing to say. There are also options with military sites you've mentioned, the Napier Barracks in Folkestone being an example of that, and other countries around Europe have used prefabricated modular accommodation as well.
A lot of those places
lots of different options.
will also be open to legal action. But Chris Philp, we really appreciate your time. We know we're taking a bit more time than you expected, but we do appreciate it this morning. Thank you so much.
The moment Chris Philp tried to pin Britain's hotel chaos on Labour, the presenter hit back with the oldest trick in the Liberal book it started under the Tories. So what? The fact that a Conservative government made a hash of something does not make the policy wrong. It only proves that the last team did not have the spine to finish what it promised. I am tired of this playground logic that says, if your side ever failed, my side must keep failing too. The real question is who is willing to fix it now. On that score, Philp is still the only one talking sense, and the whole studio knew it. Let us get the numbers straight. The 700 million Rwanda bill is thrown around as if it were burnt cash. Nonsense. The Home Office spends 8 million a day, nearly 3 billion a year on hotel rooms for people who arrived illegally. Do the sums every month, we keep the hotel tap running, we blow another $250 million. Rwanda would have paid for itself in 3 months if it had stopped even a fraction of the boats. Australia proved that when you remove the product, the customers stop coming. Illegal entries to Australia fell overnight from 20,000 a year to fewer than 200 once the boats knew they would be towed back or sent to Nauru. The same deterrent works everywhere. It is tried. The only thing that fails is political nerve. The presenter keeps repeating that 70-80 of arrivals are genuine refugees. Where does that figure come from? From the same Home Office that grants asylum at the end of a 6-year backlog, while the claimant has already vanished into the grey economy. In 2023, 54 of Channel arrivals came from Albania, a safe NATO country whose citizens can already travel here visa-free. Another 18 came from India, Georgia and Moldova, none of whom are at war. The top country for successful asylum claims last year was Iran, yet the acceptance rate for Iranians is only 47. Add in appeals, withdrawals and absconding, and the true grant rate for Channel boaters drops well below half. So spare me the sob story that most are fleeing bombs, most are fleeing tax bills and conscription into their own peacetime armies. The European Court of Human Rights likes to paint Rwanda as unsafe, but the UNHCR still charters flights from Libya to Kigali every month. In 2022 alone, the UN moved 2,400 Sudanese and Somali refugees from North African camps to Rwanda, and not a single one was shot in the street. The picture of a dead refugee that circulates on Twitter was taken in 2018 during a food riot inside a camp run by guess who, the UN itself. Rwanda has since signed binding treaties with Britain, Israel and Denmark on refugee protection. Israel sent 4,000 Eritreans and Sudanese there in 2021. None have been returned to danger, and the Israeli Supreme Court upheld the deal. If Rwanda is good enough for Jewish democracy, it is good enough for the sixth richest economy in the world. The presenter sneers that only 3 people ever went to Rwanda. True, and whose fault is that? Labour, the SNP and the Lib Dems tied the scheme up in litigation until the election clock ran out. They weaponized every court from Strasbourg to the Supreme Court, not because they care about refugees, but because they want the boats to keep coming. A permanent Labour client base is being ferried across the Channel every night, young men who will one day vote for the hand that fed them in a hotel. That is the real electoral calculus behind the virtue signalling. Meanwhile, councils run by so-called conservatives are now suing their own side to keep hotels empty of migrants. I have no sympathy for these councils. They spent the last decade signing off planning permission for luxury flats while British soldiers slept in mouldy barracks. Napier Barracks was good enough for our boys coming back from Afghanistan. It is good enough for grown men who left France. The same councils that cry inhumane over modular housing were happy to house COVID rough sleepers in shipping containers during lockdown. The only difference is that those containers were in their own high streets where voters could see them. The barge argument is even more dishonest. Bibi Stockholm was condemned because Legionella was found in the water tanks, exactly the kind of teething trouble you fix when you run any facility, not a reason to scrap the idea. The Health and Safety Executive cleared the barge after 3 weeks. Labour still shut it down, preferring to keep 50,000 people in 4-star hotels at public expense. The same people who tell us carbon is killing the planet think nothing of keeping every hotel light burning 24 hours a day for people who should not be here in the first place. Here is what I would do tomorrow morning. First, enact the Illegal Migration Act in full. Anyone arriving illegally is detained and removed within 28 days. No ifs, no buts. Second, withdraw from the ECHR's interim measures protocol so that one anonymous judge in Strasbourg can no longer ground planes with a text message. Third, reopen the Rwanda route and add Ghana and Ivory Coast as extra processing hubs. Both countries have already signed memoranda with Denmark and are desperate for the cash. Fourth, give the Royal Navy legal power to tow boats back to Calais, as the Greeks do every week in the Aegean. Finally, cap annual asylum grants at 5,000 and require that every claimant be processed at a British embassy overseas, just as we did for the Hong Kong BNO scheme. If you want our protection, queue up like everyone else. The British public are not heartless, they are tired of being played for fools. We welcomed 400,000 Poles in 2004 without a single hotel because they came legally, worked hard, and went home for Christmas. The same people who brand Poles white Europeans and therefore acceptable now tell us that 20,000 Albanian men need a suite in Kensington. I reject that double standard, and so does every taxi driver, nurse and shelf stacker I speak to. The only question left is whether the next Conservative leadership contest produces a leader who will finish the Rwanda policy or another one who will apologize for it. If it is the latter, do not blame Nigel Farage when he comes back to hoover up those votes.